Hello, and welcome back to the Empowered Resilient Woman, a podcast that supports all women on the journey to becoming their most resilient self in life and in business. I'm your host, Kimberly Smith. Today, we have a very special guest. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a very long time. I am being joined by Haley Fountain, who is a 3-time certified integrative nutrition health coach with a specialty in hormone health for women. We need this. Haley is also a 200-hour certified yoga and meditation instructor, and she works with women through private coaching, group programs, and group events here in Houston to help them balance their hormones, improve gut health, and regulate their nervous system so they can be happier and healthier. Welcome to the show, Haley.
Thank you so much. I have been looking forward to this as well.
I know. It feels like this has been in the works for a very long time. I mean, of course, you and I have been in the same network. We've worked together, and it's just been such an honor to see your business grow, to see it blossom. And for a very long time, I have known that you have a ton of wisdom that I wanted to share with our listeners. So thank you so much for being here.
I'm so excited.
So yeah, let's talk about how you got into this line of work. You know, I'm always really fascinated, and I think that our listeners really appreciate hearing about how somebody, you know, kind of how their experience built upon each other, or how they just kind of, you know, got into their entrepreneurial journey in addition to maybe their 9-to-5. What called you to this work specifically?
Yeah, I'm still working on how to explain this in the most short way possible, but just at a high level, I mean, like nearly everyone that's in the holistic health space, I had health issues that modern medicine was not solving for me. And so I had to seek out alternative options. I certainly appreciate the, modern medical system that we have, Western medicine. And it certainly has a place in my life when needed. But I found that I was just being prescribed pill after pill. Like I had really bad acid reflux for many years. I had painful periods. I had, was really stressed and anxious quite often. And it was just like, here's another pill. And then that pill gave me a side effect. And here's another pill. And I just thought, like, there has to be another way to figure all this out. And I just don't want to be taking all these medications. Really, it started through trial and error, probably, 10 years ago. And a lot of my interest in health, actually, I do some modeling and acting, to be quite honest, came from an interest in weight loss. But since then, there's nothing wrong with that. But like, since then, it's shifted a lot more to just like being the healthiest version of myself. But I digress. I started just through trial and error and a lot of research. There weren't a ton of resources that were readily available about ways you could heal your body, like healing your gut with all my acid reflux problems and like stuff about hormonal health. So a lot of research, a lot of trial and error. I was working my, corporate job, and I really needed a creative outlet. So I started as a blogger. I started my website is Holistic in Houston. That's my domain name and my business name. And so I started doing that in 2018, beginning of 2018. So a little over 5 years ago. And then through that, I was doing the whole like influencer thing and just really sharing what I was learning, and just with the purpose of, just genuinely sharing everything. And then people, I think, started to resonate with what I was sharing. Other people that were on a similar journey and wanted more natural solutions to some of their health concerns. And so it just built upon there. I didn't even know what a coach was. I didn't know that that was a thing. People started reaching out to me being like, hey, can I pay you to give me a consult? And so I started coaching, but I didn't know that was what I was doing. And then the pandemic hit. I was still working, but, work slowed down for a lot of us, I think. And I had a lot more free time, went back to school, got certified as an integrative nutrition health coach. And through that, I really started to find a niche in hormonal health, because there's just a lot of confusion around that. And especially around women's reproductive health and everything else, it's all connected. So I went back to school again, got my advanced accreditation in hormonal health. And then that led me down to like nervous system regulation and stress and anxiety. So then I became a yoga instructor. And so I'm a Sagittarius. So I'm just always like learning and very curious. But yeah, that's that's the shortest way I can describe it, but really just trial and error and curiosity and wanting to help people.
I love it. Yeah, I would love if you could give our listeners too, just a little bit more insight on that term holistic, right? I mean, I love that your business is called Holistic in Houston. I, of course, know what that means, but I think a lot of people don't. You hear that term kind of thrown around a lot. And, of course, there's kind of like this, it's kind of attributed to kind of the woo woo and the granola and like, well, what does that mean for me? What does that mean? What makes holistic different than the typical, say, Western approach to medicine and treating illnesses or conditions?
I love that question. I'm so glad you asked that. And yes, certainly that word comes with a lot of baggage around, maybe woo woo. And certainly I got a little bit of woo woo in my practice. I'm into all that, but you don't have to be into woo woo to want to seek a more holistic approach. So holistic, if you break down that word whole, it's treating the whole person rather than a single symptom. So generally in Western medicine, when I say Western, I mean like Western world, America, and our sort of modern medical society, there's so many great breakthroughs. Everything's very science-based, which is amazing. But it's acute care, meaning you have a symptom, here's a pill or some sort of something prescribing either a pill or a lifestyle change or whatever for that specific symptom. Holistic means you're treating the whole person and you believe that it's an interchangeable system of different functions that all contribute to certain symptoms, looking at multiple symptoms and seeing how all of them are connected to one. So I'll give you an example. I have a headache. Modern medicine says I have a headache, take an Advil. Holistic says I have a headache. What could be causing this headache? Am I dehydrated? Am I hungry? Did I not sleep well? And then going from there, maybe it's all three. Am I stressed? Do I have tension in my back because I haven't moved my body because I'm working at a computer? So holistic.
Do you have allergies like me?
Yes, allergy. Yeah, there's so many things, right? So holistic, from a holistic perspective, you're looking at, okay, and also I'm looking at, okay, what other symptoms are you having besides that headache? Like, are you, so you kind of go from there and almost create this like mind map of things and try to figure out what the root cause. Sometimes it's multiple root causes, but so both approaches can potentially solve the problem. You take an Advil, the headache will go away.
Sure.
For me, holistic health is very important because I can take an Advil and make the headache go away, but it's going to come back tomorrow. So I want to figure out how I can prevent the headache. Does that make sense?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And I think that you used a key word there, preventative, right? And I think that when we do practice holistic medicine and holistic self-care, we are taking that more preventative approach, right? We're just not reactive and waiting for the diagnosis or for the symptoms, right? We are participating and taking responsibility for our health, right? And not letting a lot of these external things within our daily lives, right, kind of determine those factors. So that's great. Yes. So, I mean, why is hormone health such a mystery to us women? I mean, much like yourself, I found myself in a little bit of a hormone predicament, right? Like I intuitively knew, I think this was back in like 2018-ish, maybe a little bit before then. I knew that I was having like some type of hormone imbalance, right? Went to my doctor. She wanted to put me on birth control again, right? I was very resistant to that, but essentially found myself down these big rabbit holes of self-educating, which is the story with a lot of folks and a lot of women, but a lot of women don't have time for that, right? Mm-hmm. So, why is our society keeping us in the dark on all of this? I mean, I don't know if you have thoughts around that or if it's something that you've even spent time thinking about. I'm curious.
Yeah. So I believe the reason that they're so confusing, there's multiple reasons. One, because they're complicated. And like you said, most people don't have enough time because there are resources out there you can learn about it. But, and certainly like I went to school for this. So they're complicated. That's number one. So that's why they're confusing. Number two, because the medical system up until about 30 years ago was designed for a man's body. So there are obviously, as a society in the medical system, they've been doing research on human bodies for hundreds of years, right? But the majority of studies on the human body up until about 30 years ago are based on men's bodies. Well, men have hormones too, but women's hormones are much more complicated because we literally create humans in our body and grow them for 9 months and give birth to them. Our hormones are much more complex. So up until the women's health movement in the 60s and 70s, nobody was really like, all the science based on women's health was actually, or all the science that, created solutions for women's health was based on men's bodies.
Men's health.
And that's why and if you think about it, the women's health movement was in the 60s and 70s, but no really policy changes were happening until the 80s or 90s. So literally, basically for the amount of time that I've been alive, about 30 years, is how long we've actually had real information and studies being done and policy being made to promote women's health. So I believe that's why it's so confusing.
Yeah. So basically this all comes back to the patriarchy.
Yes. Don't get me started.
Right. We won't go completely down that rabbit hole, but I think I've heard that before, that the health system was, they primarily used, for studies like, male cadavers and things like that to do like testing and all that stuff on. Right. So it's wild to me, right? Like to think, yes, like women, like we are just now starting to be prioritized and all of this information. I mean, and in reality too, 30 years is not a long time.
No.
Like there is so much more to know when it comes to this. So but of course it's necessary. We need it. You're just like you said, we make babies, we have complex systems. We are so different from men. So all right. Well, we're here to kind of get to the bottom of this for sure and learn a little bit more. I think we all need this. And if you haven't thought about your hormone health, don't feel bad. I'm sure, our lives are just so busy that it might not even be on your radar. So I hope this kind of hits home for a lot of people. Maybe there's certain symptoms that you're currently having that you're like, man, that could be a hormone issue. I never thought about that. What are some of the symptoms that people typically have when they come to you, when they come to work with you? What's really going on in their lives? What are they experiencing? What are those red flags that people should really be watching out for?
There are so many symptoms connected to your hormones being, a little out of whack. And I hate that word. My hormones are out of whack, because I feel like that's just so, that it's so like vague, but that just to be relatable, that's like, everyone kind of understands what that feels like. Right. I think.
Right. Sure.
But certainly I can tell you at a high level, the symptoms that I see, hormonal acne, like adult acne, obviously people experience acne during puberty, but like at this onset of just like really bad acne, particularly along the jawline, is pretty common. Painful periods is a big one. Painful or like irregular periods, women wanting to come off the birth control pill and needing some support on that, because that's a whole other topic too, but there's a lot of things that happen to your body when you take the birth control pill. Menopausal symptoms. I work with a lot of perimenopausal and menopausal women. I know the irony, because I haven't actually gone through menopause myself, but there's not a lot of education and people don't really talk about menopause that much. So I work with a lot of women to help them, make that transition as easy as possible and stay, present with their body. So menopausal symptoms, weight management is a really big one, which weight can be tied to so many things, but sometimes if you're in a situation where you're like, I'm eating pretty well, I'm exercising, and like, I'm not losing weight. In fact, I'm gaining weight. That's typically something hormonal. Overeating or undereating is a big one. So if like major changes in appetite, because our hormones, whenever women think of hormones, they only think of like your period or like fertility, but hormones actually, to define what a hormone is actually, while we're on that topic, hormones are the chemical messengers that tell your body, every cell in your body, what to do, where to do it, when, and how. So, your hormones affect your hunger. So if you notice like really rapid, strange changes in your appetite, sleep and energy are also a big one. So like if you have really weird, maybe like your wake and sleep cycles are off, you've got that sort of, wired and tired. If you're really wired and you can't fall asleep at night, but then you're so sluggish all day and like that cycle is repeating, that's typically something hormonal.
Gotcha. Okay. So on that note, our hormone system's so complex, so much going on. I imagine that when one thing's doing one thing, another thing should be doing another at a certain level. How should our hormones be operating throughout the month? What are some of the basics that we as women should understand about our bodies in terms of what should be happening with which hormones and when?
Yeah. So I'll speak in regards to the menstrual cycle, because I think that is what most women can relate to. So, assuming you are still menstruating, you're, not going through menopause, or haven't passed menopause, and you're not, going through puberty. I'll be speaking to women roughly ages like, 12 or 13 to like what, 45, 50. There's 3 or 4 hormones that I want to talk about in a women's cycle. So assuming you have a regular menstrual cycle, that's roughly, let's say 28 days. No one's cycle is perfect. Let's just, for the purpose of this, say 28 days. So day 1 of your menstrual cycle is the first day you bleed. So day 1 is the day your period starts. That's called your follicular phase. During your follicular phase, your body is starting to pump out estrogen. And it's doing that because it's actually preparing you to ovulate. So estrogen needs to be a little higher during this time to help start like building up the uterine lining, preparing to release an egg. And what's really nice is during this time, you will start to notice as you start to reach ovulation. Estrogen is really great. It's one of the youthful hormones. You'll notice that your skin's a little brighter and plumper. Maybe your lips and your breasts are a little bit fuller. Your skin is smoother. Like you just feel, what modern society would consider physically feminine. Once you get to ovulation, which is, roughly day 14, but you can ovulate on day 13. You can ovulate usually not any sooner than that. You can also ovulate. Your body can delay ovulation. That's a whole other thing. But let's say you're having like a normal, regular menstrual cycle. Your body's going to start to pump out testosterone during that time. So people think of testosterone, they get scared because they think that's a man's hormone. And men and women have the same hormones, just in different amounts. So you're going to have your testosterone should be highest around the time that you're ovulating. And that's because whether or not you choose to have children, biologically speaking, we are reproductive beings. Your body, like biologically, wants you to get pregnant. Right. So testosterone is going to increase your sex drive during that time. It's also going to make you more confident too, which is great. I like to schedule, like I'm near ovulation right now. I like to schedule my podcast and all that stuff, if possible, around ovulation. That's a whole other topic too. I'm really into cycle syncing, but you'll be in, your testosterone should be higher. Then if you do not become pregnant, your body will release that egg after 24 hours. And, what happens then is your body may not know, like at that point, like if you're pregnant right away, but your body's going to start, releasing progesterone. Progesterone is helping to thicken that uterine lining in case there is a fertilized egg in there, to create that house, for the baby, for the embryo to start to grow. Progesterone is great. It is the kind of chill hormone. It makes you feel nice, makes you feel good. So, I find with many women are struggling with estrogen dominance. They have too much estrogen and not enough progesterone. So if you're having like really bad PMS symptoms, that's typically a sign of estrogen dominance. So, because, you don't have enough progesterone during that time, but progesterone should be high. And then if you are not pregnant, after approximately 2 weeks after you ovulate, if you're not pregnant, then that progesterone is going to have a sharp drop and estrogen is going to come back up, and you're going to bleed out that uterine lining that your body just built. And then it happens all over again.
Awesome. Thank you for that overview. I mean, even having done a lot of this research, you kind of forget, right? You forget like what's going on. And I think it's so empowering to know what's happening in your body and when it's happening in your body. You mentioned syncing with your period, and I myself have kind of practiced designing my life around my period. I know that sounds crazy to a lot of people, but like you said, you want to schedule your podcast during that time where you're feeling great. How can women start to work with their menstrual cycle? Are there any maybe first starter tips that you would recommend for a woman to maybe start to get in touch with her cycle or start to really learn about her body on a personal level?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I believe every woman should be tracking her cycle. The American, I'm probably going to butcher this, Society of Gynecology, and I forget what they're called. I send it to you. You can link it in the show notes, but they now refer to the woman's period as her 5th vital sign. Your vital is like your your heart rate, your breath, all those things, your blood pressure. Now they refer to your period as the fifth vital sign, because you can learn so much about what's going on in your body through your menstrual cycle. So first and foremost, every woman should be tracking her cycle. I think a lot of women don't think about this unless they're like me and don't want to take hormonal contraceptives and are doing it for pregnancy prevention, or if they're trying to get pregnant. So really it's always just around pregnancy is when most women are tracking their cycle. Like I remember being younger, going to the doctor and they'd be like, "What was your last period?" I'm like, "I don't know." Like now I can pull up my app and I know exactly. Or if you're like a paper chart person. So whether it's tracking it on paper, you can find free paper charts online. You can download free apps. There's paid apps. You can track it, but even if pregnancy is not on your mind, whether preventing or tracking your menstrual cycle, number one, and just starting to pay attention to the patterns, start to pay attention to abnormalities. Really, really important to just track that stuff. I'm going to stop there because I feel like you'll have questions from there. Oh yeah. Well, I will add to, and when it comes to cycle syncing, paying attention to how you feel in the different phases of your cycle, and then not pushing yourself to do things toward the end of your cycle and the beginning of your cycle. So what I mean by that is after ovulation, as you near your period, you'll find you're naturally a little more tired. So maybe you ease off on like really intense tasks. Maybe you ease off really intense workouts. Personally for me, when I'm on my period, those first like 3 days, I really try to rest and get a lot of sleep. I try to get like an extra 30 minutes to an hour of sleep. I don't schedule a lot in the mornings because I find I need a little bit of a slower morning. If my exercise is just like long walks and maybe like slow yoga flows. So just really paying attention to how your body feels. Some women feel great on day one of their period and they want to go like conquer the world. That's great. For most women, we don't. I think the first step is just tracking and just noticing how you feel and seeing how you can, schedule your life around it. You can't schedule your entire life around your menstrual cycle. Like, sorry, boss, can't come in today because I'm bleeding out of my uterus. Maybe one day we'll get there, baby steps. But, even just trying to shift maybe 20 to 30% of things. Like, for this podcast, I was like, we could have done it last week, but I was like, you know what, I'm going to, I'm menstruating or I'm at the end of that. So this week, let's do it this week. So I know I'm in a better headspace and a better hormonal space.
That's right. And I've been tracking my period as well. I think it was 2012 when I went off of birth control and I was preparing to get pregnant. I was kind of in that 6 month to a year timeframe where I was like, my body needs to maybe readjust and recalibrate. And of course wanted to wait until I was 100% ready, but I've continued to track it. And it's been really insightful. And I actually love that I've now have all of these years, over 10 years of data that actually, like, if I needed to, right, I could go back and look at what things were like, and I can see how my cycle has changed over time. If it's gotten shorter or if it's gotten longer. I typically kind of am right around that 24-day cycle, but then like every 3 or 4 months, I'm right at 30 days, whereas like I wouldn't have known that was a pattern had I not been able to look back, because going to that 30-day marker, there were a couple of times where I was like, holy shit, am I pregnant? Like, what's going on? Right. But no, your body may have those natural fluctuations, which I've learned that mine does. Scheduling, being mindful of what you put on your personal calendar. I think these days we are all borderline overbooked all the time. And like time management is such a huge topic that I talk about. I work with my clients on, even myself, I'm constantly trying to make those adjustments. And when you know how you're feeling, like you have no apologies about saying no, right? You have no apologies about declining that invitation, and you protect that time. I find just like you, in that beginning part of my cycle, I'm like, great. I know I'm going to want some social time. I'm going to want to, maybe take a trip. So I'm feeling great, right? Like if I kind of you can plan trips around your schedule or your menstrual cycle like that. I've even like organized my visitation with my daughter so that it falls on the primary weeks where I'm like, I want her to get the best of me. It doesn't always work out that way, but I definitely try. It's something I think about all the time.
Yeah. I mean, to add to that, again, here I am talking about the patriarchy, but like we live in a patriarchal society where we're expected to be on all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and our modern society that, probably you and I and everyone else that's listening to this lives in is again designed for a man's body. And men are also cyclical hormonal beings, but they're cyclical on a 24-hour cycle. Women are cyclical on a 28 to 30-ish day cycle. So your
Mm-hmm.
energy levels are going to be different day to day and week to week. And that's okay. You can still accomplish what you need to accomplish, but maybe each day, each week doesn't look the same. Some days and
Right.
weeks, you're going to be a lot more outward focused, sort of that push, that masculine energy. And then at other times, you need to give yourself a couple of days to just recalibrate and rest. And, again, that can be difficult. And it's not like you can, exclusively manage everything based on your cycle. But again, if you can do 20 to 30%, plan your visitations with your daughter, plan, all the like really important events if possible at a time when you're going to be feeling good. And then if you have an important event on a day where you're going to be hormonally low, don't schedule anything else. Like make sure
Right. You can
just being
prepare.
intentional. Yeah, prepare and being intentional. And that's why tracking your cycle can be so useful and effective in just helping you feel good and live a happy life.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many women. And in fact, I was talking to somebody recently and they were talking about how they were feeling hormonal and they were just like, man, I hate being a woman. And I was like, oh no, no. Like, because this should not be something that we hate about ourselves. We should not fear that time of the month when we get our period and maybe have low energy. Like, if anything, that is permission. Like that we all, you hear it all over the place now. There's more of a dialogue around like giving yourself permission to rest and to do less and to like, this is that permission, right? Like if you can make peace with the fact that you have a magnificent, intelligent body that is divinely made, right? Like, I mean, you know me, you and me geek out, right? Like your menstrual
Yeah.
period syncs with the moon. Like there are so many things, right? There's so much information there. And that data is so useful and you can really use it to your own advantage. So something to think about for anybody who maybe has been curious about their cycle or maybe wanting to get off hormonal birth control. You can definitely manage your goal of not getting pregnant, right? Like you can manage that and also be more in touch with your body. And honestly, after I did that, I felt like a lot of my anxiety went away. Anxiety that I got from being on the pill, a lot of those adverse symptoms that I had from being on the pill, I felt just more present. And I was just able to see things and recognize things more, right? I could tell when I was more in touch with my body, right? I could tell when I was starting to feel a little like sad and emotional. Whereas before it was just like, I felt like I was in this whirlwind and I couldn't really prepare for it.
Yes. Well, you just said something really important that I want to highlight. You said getting back in touch with my own body, which is, one of my like taglines on my Instagram and my website
Yes.
is like, I help women become the CEO of their own bodies. And that's so important because a lot of us have outsourced our health. And now don't get me wrong, doctors, health coaches, nutritionists,
Yeah.
dietitians, all the therapists, they have and by the way, I'm going to quote Dr. Christian Northrup on this. She says, all these professionals have a body of knowledge, but only you have knowledge of your body.
Oh my
And
gosh.
that's
Yes. I love that.
so important. Like you are the decision maker for your body. You are the CEO of your own body. You may have certain health issues. You may have certain goals you want to make. There are, as they say, for lack of a better term, there are multiple ways to skin a cat. Just because one doctor or one person tells you that this is the solution does not mean it's the only solution. And we shouldn't be outsourcing our health. You are the decision maker. It's your body. But you can only know what's right for your body if you're actually connected and in touch with your body. If you're fully disconnected from your body and outsourcing all those decisions about your health, outsourcing, it's so funny. Like people will be like, well, how am I supposed to feel? Or like, it's like, well, how do you feel? Like, that's how you're supposed to feel. Like we're just outsourcing so many of these things. Start to insource some of this stuff. And again, you can rely on people who are experts in their field to give you advice. But at the end of the day, it's your body, your decision.
For sure. For sure. And I find that question is really hard for a lot of women, right? And just maybe just a lot of people too, right? Because we are so focused on the external a lot of times, right? And I find this with a lot of my clients too, when I throw things back at them and I say, well, how does that make you feel? Or how do you feel about this part of your life, right? And while they may have some initial thoughts or reactions, when you really sink into that question, right? When you really go deeper and think, okay, well, for the sake of talking about our periods and our bodies, well, I feel tired. Okay, well, what does that mean, right? Does your back ache? Does your neck hurt, right? Do you have, kind of a low grade stomach ache? Where are you feeling that, right? And yeah, it is. You can really be in touch with your body and use that as information in your daily life. Mm-hmm. Now, what are some of the big things that interfere with our hormone health, right? The production of the necessary hormones, the balance and the natural flow or fluctuation, because, obviously there's a lot happening internal, but it's not just an internal process. And we can influence that in a positive direction.
Yes. Yeah. So there are so many things that can interfere with our hormonal function. Obviously, from a nutrition perspective, if you're eating a lot of processed foods, if you're not eating enough, which is so funny because I think everyone's so scared of overeating, but I find most of my clients aren't eating enough, and that can actually cause a lot of health issues. So not eating enough real foods like fruits, vegetables, things that were, either grown or raised on the land, or, eating a lot of processed foods, eating foods that have a lot of chemicals on them. Certainly all those things are going to interact with your hormones. So like, nutrition, not getting enough water, like the basics, which, we all struggle with from time to time. So no biggie, but something to be mindful of when it comes to like, if you're not getting enough sleep. Sleep is the foundation of everything. Like just one night of disturbed sleep can throw off your gut like they've done studies on this. It can throw off your gut microbiome. It can spike your blood sugar. Like so many things like happen. And so, getting enough sleep, if you're not getting enough quantity and quality of sleep, certainly can really throw off your hormones. So like I always, even before nutrition with my clients, if they're not sleeping well, that's our first, it's all connected obviously because it's holistic, but that's our first line of defense is getting our first, point of attack, I suppose. I'm using like war terms here, but I love it. That's where we start is with their sleep and getting that on board. Exercise is another one too. Over exercising or under exercising. I find a lot of my clients, they're not eating enough and they're over exercising, and overexerting your body can put yourself into what we can talk a little bit about nervous system regulation and how that all plays in, but puts your body in a fight or flight mode. If you're overdoing
cortisol spike, right?
Cortisol spike, adrenaline, then you get adrenal fatigue, and then your body can't manage, which is going to impact your sleep. It's just like all connected.
Burnout, right? Yes. I mean, I was definitely guilty of that for years. For years, I would, count my calories, and I would go to the gym and spend 2 hours. I would do like an hour of cardio and then weights and whatever. And then like just eat like a protein bar when I can't back, and I really thought that was like the pinnacle of health. Like I thought I was doing everything right. Right. And of course, but then, I reached a point in my life where I had all of these other things happening and I wasn't actually losing weight. Like you said, I was having a hard time shedding a few pounds, and I was like, what is going on? And then like my initial thought was like, to restrict even more and to go harder even more, which is such a mind fuck, right? I mean, to feel like you're already doing so much and it's not giving you the results that you want. And then, feeling like even more defeated, like you have to keep pushing, right? It's definitely unproductive.
And that is so common. Like what you just described is, and what happens is, and especially, like when you're 22, like you can do whatever the heck you want and you can be, small, but as you get older, as your body changes, I find women, once you get to 30, you can still totally be in great shape, but like you have to be more intentional about it. You have to be more intentional about sleep. When you're like 21, you can just, go out on a binger and like drink everything and not sleep. and then go to the gym in the morning. Yeah. Like whatever. And like, you're fine. But like, once you get into your 30s and 40s, once you've had kids, your hormones change, your body changes, you have to be more intentional about rest. And yeah, most women, I mean, under exercising can impact your hormones negatively. We do need to move our bodies every day. We need to sweat out, detox, I'll talk about that in a moment, but like, yeah, the exercise and the food thing, making sure you're eating enough, getting enough protein and moving your body in intentional ways and cycle syncing, like I mentioned, doing the more intense workouts around that, like follicular, middle follicular ovulation time, and then easing up toward the end of your cycle in the first few days of your period can be really useful to kind of get into a good flow and optimize where you're at. Hormonally speaking, detoxing is so important. So, making sure you're getting a good sweat at least every other day, but ideally every day. If you're not, if you live in Houston, just go for a walk, but
just go outside.
Just go outside. Yeah. Like literally go for a 15-minute walk. You'll be drenched. Just
go get the mail and that
literally go get the mail. Yeah. So it's not that hard to do here. I mean, I feel like I shower like 3 times a day because I'm just like always sweaty.
Oh my God.
But like saunas, I'm a big fan of, I have an infrared sauna blankets, but if you can go to a sauna at your gym, a dry sauna, the wet saunas can be really relaxing and stuff, but for this purpose, getting your body into that detoxing stage, you want to be in a dry sauna. So I'm a big fan of infrared saunas. So helping your body to detox hormones naturally. Sweating is just so essential. And then replenishing with electrolytes, of course, especially again, if you live here in Houston. I'm trying to think what else. Environmental toxins, our water supply. Don't get me started. Water, please. If you don't take anything away from this, please don't drink tap water. And like the Brita filter, I'm sorry, the Brita filter is not enough. The Houston water supply has chlorine in it, which is a massive endocrine disruptor. Endocrine system, which is what all the glands that manage your hormones. So either get a really high quality water filter like a Berkey, or consider like a water service. I go to Water Tree Heights.
Same, love Water Tree Heights.
Yeah,
they really are. And they're so sweet. I just feel like that woman there, she like blesses you every time you walk into. I feel like it's holy water. She's
literally. They're so great. Shout out to Water Tree. They're awesome. But yeah. And, being intentional, living in Houston, the air quality is not amazing. There's not much you can do about that, unfortunately. Obviously you can get air filters in your home and stuff, which from studies have shown they're not the most effective, but, so that's not something you can necessarily control, but like water we drink, we are more than 70% water. Like you should be drinking like a lot of water each day. So that's a really important way. Home cleaning products.
So nutrition, obviously like we hear this all the time, like leaning away from processed foods. Now I have a question regarding gluten. So, I mean, I feel like I have a mild gluten allergy where it just doesn't sit well with my stomach. Nothing crazy happens, but is there any connection to gluten and like our hormones? I mean, it's sugar. So I imagine that there's something going on in there when we consume maybe gluten heavy, like have a heavy amount of gluten in our diet.
Great question. So there is so much controversy about gluten right now. And if you ask 5 different people in the health space, you'll probably get 5 different answers. I used to be exclusive gluten-free. I didn't eat gluten at all. And I felt great while I was doing it. I do eat gluten now. I'm intentional about the type of gluten that I eat.
Like organic.
Yes, for a couple of reasons. And beyond that, actually organic, but also because I don't know if you've noticed this, but anyone listening to this too, have you ever gone to Europe and you go to Italy and you eat 10 pounds of pasta every day and you're not bloated. In fact, your bowel movements are great and you feel great. There's a reason for that.
I ate so much, me and Aziz were laughing. I ate so much bread and rice and couscous in Morocco.
And you're fine, right? Yeah.
I was totally fine. Fine.
There's a reason for that. Because the type of wheat that we have here in America is different than the type of wheat that they grow in Europe. Theirs is more closer to an ancient grain, where ours is like a genetically modified, even the organic ones. That's why like when you travel, they're always like, do you have any seeds or plants, whatever? Because they don't want to mix that stuff.
Oh, right.
The one we have here is it's been like stripped of a lot of the nutrients that help, and it has a lower protein content than over there. But, without getting too nerdy, just know that the wheat that they use over there is different than the wheat here, which is why, and also there's two factors too, because when you're on vacation, you're less stressed, your digestion works better too. But like, I'm lactose intolerant, but when I was in Italy, girl, I had bread for breakfast, pasta for lunch, gelato for dessert. And then I had pasta for dinner and gelato for dessert. I did not gain any weight. I was not bloated. Like my bowel movements were like amazing. There's a reason for that. It's because the quality of the food is way better. So I like to tell my clients a couple of things. You cutting out gluten, I think for short amounts of time, like I have a 10-day gut reset that I sometimes put my clients on, can be really helpful just to give your body. I think it's good to give your body a break from things because gluten is inflammatory. Does everyone need to cut it out?
Right.
Not necessarily, but we want to seek out higher quality versions of it. I'll give a couple of shout outs. There's a bakery. They're actually closed down right now. It's called Rafa Bakery, but hopefully they should be opening back up soon, but they do, a really delicious fermented sourdough bread. And they use a really high quality flour. It's King Arthur flour. And they ferment it for like 3 or 4 days. A lot of the bakeries around here, if you are like just modern bakeries, if you buy bread from them or even sourdough, they use like a quick starter, which makes it quicker as it sounds, but it also, the fermentation process, when you cut corners, you're going to feel that. So trying to find, there's not a lot of places, so Rafa is the only one that I know of, that's trying to find places that will ferment it and kind of make things the old fashioned way. So like long fermented sourdough breads are really good. I find that like I can eat like a whole, maybe not a whole loaf, like half a loaf of their bread and I don't feel sick. There's also a pizza company, Capiche Pizza. They use half King Arthur flour and half flour imported from Italy, and they ferment the dough for a few days as well. So I find that that's one of the few pizzas that I can eat that doesn't make me feel sick. So, to answer your question, depends on the person. Some people have a mild gluten allergy. Most of us can consume gluten. If you find that you feel kind of weird after you eat it, consider looking for a better quality gluten, something that's fermented. And like when you go places and you're buying bread, like ask questions. If you see like the active yeast on the ingredients list for bread, probably want to steer clear. You want it to be like a naturally fermented bacteria. So you have to ask a lot of questions, and typically it's going to be small micro bakeries, micro businesses that are doing it more intentionally because it's really hard to mass produce that.
Right. Well, maybe one day.
Maybe one day. Yeah. Maybe that'll be our next business venture.
For sure. Right. So there's all these things that impact our hormones, our nutrition, our sleep, the exercise, environmental toxins. I mean, it's a big topic too, but personally, I've even switched my personal care products too, right? So perfumes, soaps, makeup, like all of that stuff has hormone disruptors in it. And, I don't want people to come away listening to this and be like, oh my God, I have to change everything in my life. Because I remember reading some of this stuff and feeling like kind of defeated that it was such a big thing to transition. If there are certain things that you can replace, I mean, whether it's maybe doing a couple of makeup pieces or your deodorant or, the cleaning products in your house or something. I know that you're very big on eliminating those environmental toxins as well. So are there any products that you recommend for people to maybe kind of reduce that environmental load of toxins that they're absorbing?
Yeah, certainly with cosmetics. I mean, just kind of, I honestly don't like day to day. I don't really wear a lot of makeup because I just don't want all those chemicals on my face. Using a tinted moisturizer is really great in place of a good natural. I really like the brand Suntegrity. Using a tinted moisturizer is a really good one. We should be wearing SPF every day. So that's tinted SPF moisturizer is awesome. When it comes to cleaning products, I use a company called Branch Basics. They're actually here out of Houston and I really like them. They make like a concentrate that you can then use for like laundry detergent and like spray. I'm also a big fan of baking soda and vinegar, just like old school. That's good, a really great way. Yep. Yeah. The vinegar sometimes can have a smell, which is why I usually opt for the Branch Basics. But like when it comes to, deep cleaning, like cleaning my tub, I use baking soda because I'm going to be like, I don't want to use chemicals in there. I take a lot of baths. So baking soda is a great option. Getting a shower head filter. Yes. Really useful. Water Tree again. So good for your hair. For this, I promise. Skin. Yeah. It makes your hair softer and it's just so much better for you. You'll notice like your face, just like it's such a, people that struggle with acne again, like pouring all those chemicals on your face. Think about how often, hopefully you're showering like once a day. No judgment if you're not, but like most of us are taking a shower at least once a day. So like, think about that. Really important. So getting a water filter, the one they have is called Anion. If you go there, they can tell you. So those are probably at a high level, some of the things that I would say are just good places to start. It's expensive to completely swap out all of your cosmetics right off the bat. But just starting to educate yourself, trying to find more natural solutions. There's a lot of really great clean brands. Ilia, ILIA is a makeup brand. I love their mascara. So yeah.
Awesome. And I mean, last but not least, I mean, let's talk about stress. I mean, external stress, right? And this is, I mean, everybody knows who's listening that this is my forte. I geek out on it. I'm constantly educating myself and, helping what I do and helping women really stay present, care for themselves better so that they can flourish in all areas of their life. Stress reduction is one of the number one areas that we focus on, right? As well as forward motion towards accomplishing the goals that they want to achieve for themselves and their lives or their businesses or their careers and so forth. We have to reduce our external stress. So, I mean, you being a yoga teacher and a meditation teacher, and obviously, an expert in the hormone field, what can you tell us about what happens kind of day to day when we're under that high level of stress? What should people know generally about their nervous system? And, every time, say, like, they get bad news or, it's that constant bombarded, like we're always being constantly bombarded by things that trigger us. So how do we take ourselves out of that? How do we integrate mindfulness, or how do you integrate mindfulness and stress reduction in your own life?
Yeah, a couple of things. So, first of all, in regards to like that stress response, if you like, one thing is like kind of making peace with your stress. Like for a while I'd be like, oh no, I'm getting stressed. And then I get stressed because I'm stressed. Like it's like a weird, thing. So like making peace with that. The stress response in the body is a really good thing. And just for those of you listening, to explain just at a really high level, the reason it's a good thing is it's designed to keep us safe, right? So our body goes into, you have your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic is you and I right now. Hopefully you're relaxed. I'm relaxed. Relaxed. It's rest and digest. It's like, let's chill, whatever. And then your sympathetic nervous system is when your body's like, time to get into action, right? It's fight or flight, or freeze or fawn. I've been sharing about that too, but it's basically a stress response. We need these stress responses to keep us safe. Otherwise, if you're just in your parasympathetic, if you're in your rest and digest all the time, you never get anything done, right? So we need these in micro amounts in the right time. But what happens is, like you said, the majority of us are being bombarded with things all day. And then we, your body is like constantly in that fight or flight. And eventually it doesn't know how to turn that off. And so you're just like, and that's where it leads to adrenal fatigue, hormonal issues, yada, yada, all that. So there's two things: eliminating outside stressors, but also improving your internal resiliency to stress. So one, you got to take an honest look at your life and be like, okay, where can I delegate? Where can I say no, create boundaries, which is very hard.
Reach.
Create boundaries, stop overcommitting. Like I have like a thing now. I'm like, every time I say no to something, I like check it off. I will reward myself when I say no to a lot of things, because then you're making space for yourself and making space for the right thing. So creating boundaries, saying no to things, stop overcommitting yourself, being really intentional, like going back to what I said about where you're at in your menstrual cycle. A conversation like this would be really draining for me on like day one of my period. But right now I'm ovulating and I'm like, woo, let's go. So like being really intentional about that, about your energy management, being intentional about what you can handle in a day. And then the other part is you're creating that internal resiliency, because the reality is there's so much in life that is out of our control. And I can control all the external things I want, but there's going to be something that comes and throws me off track. Or not that there's a track, but you know what I mean? It throws me off, and I have to be able to bounce back quicker. You have to improve that bounce back rate. So that's where mindfulness and meditation and the breath come in. And I like to think of it like the way that I approach therapy. Like I started going to therapy in my early 20s. A lot of people wait till they have like a big, massive issue in their life, a divorce, a crisis, death of a loved one, to go to therapy. And I'm really grateful. My grandma really encouraged me to start going to therapy young, because I learned tools in my toolbox and had some stuff and built a relationship with my therapist that then when those things happened, of course they were still difficult, but I had some things to lean back on. And then I also had a trusted professional that I could work with. So I like to think of stress resiliency in that way, learning tools and techniques before you need them. So you have things to fall back on in your body. You already have that muscle memory. And with the therapist analogy, improving your relationship with your stress response and having that trust in yourself. So what that looks like for me, and it can look a lot of different ways, is everyone talks about a gratitude practice, starting your day, because that's something I can control. I control how I start the first 30 minutes of my day, starting my day without my phone and starting with, a gratitude practice, a short meditation, maybe a little like yoga to get into my body, like a light flow. So that way I can't control if I pick up my phone and shit hit the fan at work, but if I can get myself in a good headspace, I can better handle that situation than if I slept in and hit snooze 5 times and, got up, forgot to make my bed, didn't prepare my meal prep the night before. Yeah. And I'm just all frazzled, right? I'm going to have a much more reactive response to that situation happening at work. Breath work is so crucial. Learning how to, because whenever you're in that sympathetic fight or flight response, your breathing is naturally going to get more shallow because your body is trying to conserve energy and get you ready, like that huffing and puffing, get you ready to run or to get, getting your limbs ready to fight. So if you can master your breath, deep belly breathing, inhaling intentionally and exhaling intentionally, then when you're stressed, instead of going to that, which we're going to do, you'll start to learn, okay, I'm stressed. Take a deep breath. I'm going to relax my body, bring down my heart rate, bring down my blood pressure, and get your body back in to take a little more control of the situation. And again, you can't control that shit's hitting the fan at work or that your kid got in a fight at school or that something happened, but you can get yourself in a place where you're a little more centered and can respond to the situation a little bit better. So I hope that answers your question, but those are kind of a couple of things.
Yeah. And these are not hard things, but they do take practice. And there is so much more conversation around all of these things in our society now, which is so amazing. But what I find and what I observe with most people is that number one, they underestimate the impact the positive impact that can be had on their life and their daily experience by creating consistency with these things, right? As humans, we're not great at creating consistency with new practices or new goals or new things in our life, right? And that's where having a coach like Haley or like myself or just any coach, honestly, right? Find yourself somebody that you jive with can come into play, because that accountability factor, if you're already trying to do too much shit on your own, I'm gonna bet having somebody in your corner, right? Having a plan, creating a strategy around these things. If you, sit down tomorrow morning and you try to make changes in every single area of your health, your nutrition, your workout schedule, your clearing away the environmental toxins and reducing, you're going to get very frustrated and easily overwhelmed. And it's going to have the opposite effect on your motivation. It's going to just kill things, right?
Yeah.
So take it slow, right? Your breath, that is for sure one of the things that I think people underestimate. You always have your breath. You always have control over it. You can take those micro moments during the day to put down your phone, put your computer away, sit in the sun and belly breathe for 5 minutes or do some box breathing for 5 minutes, right? And then ask yourself, how do I feel, right? Like, you're obviously going to feel better, but it takes doing the thing, reflecting on the thing, absorbing those results and just taking it one day at a time, taking it moment by moment. Obviously setting realistic goals, that's something that's going to set yourself up for success. But yes, I think reducing our external stress, we all have to be mindful of what our capacity is, learn to say no more, to delegate, to let go, right? And you said a couple of times, right, to make peace with the fact that we don't control people. And I think this comes back to one of our principles on the show too, right? Which is patience, humility, and surrender. And to me, like, patience, sometimes we just have to wait longer, right? And again, we don't control how quickly maybe other people on the other side of things get things completed, and that can create stress in our lives. But the surrender portion, right? Oftentimes we're trying to do things that are not our responsibility to begin with, or we've already done everything that we could possibly do, and we've just got to let that shit go and move on. Mm-hmm. Right? Or we're getting tied up with something that's in the past, right? And we're letting ourselves be taken out of the present moment because we're consumed by something in the past or in the future that hasn't yet occurred, right? We're maybe already writing that script or ruminating over something. Those are the things that you can be supported with, by a coach, by a mental health professional. Start there, right? And then, of course, when it comes to nutrition and other things, you may have to deploy some additional resources, which is okay too. Let's go into our lightning round. We've had a great conversation. I would love to know, what are 3 words that describe you today, and who are you aspiring to grow into?
I would have to say optimistic, curious, and authentic.
Love it.
Yeah. And in terms of, do you feel like, are you asking me, are those the words that describe who I'm trying to grow into as well?
Sure. Or like if there's, a personal goal that you have, or a growth goal or some, what are you aspiring to do right now? What's on your radar?
Yeah. I mean, I think, with that authenticity is my main intention in my life right now. And what that looks like is really being clear about what I want and speaking my truth, even when it's uncomfortable. And in doing that, I'm attracting all the things and people and opportunities into my life that are so aligned. And in doing that, I'm also growing my business, because when you're in your authentic energy and really being true to yourself, everything else around you seems to shift. So it looks like uncomfortable conversations and being a lot more direct than I maybe would have been in the past. And also asking for things that I want to, like putting myself out there with opportunities as I'm growing my business, doing new partnerships and things like that. So that's who I'm working to grow into, the most authentic version of myself.
Oh, I absolutely love that. And yeah, uncomfortable conversations, they always elevate us into a space of growth, right? Because we get to practice our communication and mutual compassion and all types of things, right? That we may talk about, but that's the real life landscape of exercising it, of practicing it, of, really living it out. What about patience, humility, and surrender? Which one do you struggle with the most here?
Surrender, for sure, which is so coincidental, because I'm just talking. It's so funny how sometimes I talk to my clients and I'm like this and that, and I'm like, man, I should really take this advice.
Oh, we all need to take our advice. Yes, for sure.
No,
we all
this is why coaches need coaches, therapists need therapists. But surrender. It is something, again, I think going back to being the most authentic version of myself and understanding that there's so much in my control. There's also so much out of my control. And I really have my whole life, I really like to feel like I'm in control. Who doesn't? But learning to let go and to surrender, I have to remind myself of that every day. And I do that because I have proof that anytime I've let go of something that I thought I didn't want to let go of, something better always comes back in, and everything is always working for our highest good. So I have to remind myself of that. Literally, it's a daily practice, and I don't always get it right, but that is something I'm really working on.
For sure. What does it mean to you to be empowered?
I love this question. So, I think you may have mentioned this, but I worked with you last year, and we really worked on getting into that empowered energy. Yeah. I know, I just absolutely love you. And I think I used to think empowered had this really masculine, assertive, aggressive energy. For me now, in this stage of my life, being empowered means that I'm fully aligned with who I am and what gifts I was God-given to put out into the world, and doing that is just staying in line with my dharma, my soul's purpose, and sharing it with the world. That is what makes me feel empowered.
Yes. Owning your magic. Yes. Making no apologies. I love that. I'm actually reading an amazing book right now. I just posted it to my Instagram. It's called Power, and it's a woman's guide to living and leading without apology.
Yes.
So good. So highly recommend to everybody. But yeah, just owning what we have. We tiptoe around stuff and we don't get anywhere with that. It doesn't serve anybody. It doesn't serve ourselves. It doesn't serve our communities or our families or our partnerships. What about resilience? We talk about resilience a lot. You've mentioned obviously building stress resilience, but how are you committed to being resilient or growing your own resilience?
Yeah, I think for me, I am just on a major growth journey. Like my goal for myself is I just want to be 1% better every day, whatever that looks like. And that looks different every day. It's different pockets of my life. But what I've started to do, and I'll be honest, I don't do it every single night, but I try to do it most nights, is just reflect and journal or just mentally reflect on my day and and ask myself, was I kind? Did I learn something new about myself today? And how can I be better tomorrow? And for me, that's what resilience is. It's about like taking things piece by piece, day by day, week by week, and just looking at it, trying to release the attachment to like not making things mean something about you, and trying to, approach yourself with compassion and being like, okay, I wasn't perfect today because I'm never perfect. But how am I going to apply a situation or something that happened today? What am I learning from it? And how can I be better tomorrow? And I feel like that's, for me, the best way I've learned how to practice resilience.
I love it. So beautiful. And what do you love about being a woman? I talked earlier and I cannot wait to hear your answer on this because
oh man.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it's so amazing to hear people's responses on this. We ask a lot of the same questions to every guest and everybody has a different take on things. And I think as women, we need to really remember how amazing we are, right? And let that be fuel. So what do you love about being a woman?
Do you have another hour?
I
know. At a high level, gosh, I love being a woman so much. It's just we're such powerful beings, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. One of the things I love about being a woman is a woman's intuition. Like men and women both have emotions, obviously, but we definitely feel our emotions, I think, on a deeper, more visceral level. So tuning into that, like getting really in touch with myself and the ability to do that is just so beautiful. I love how intuitive we are. They say women's intuition, gut feeling, whatever you want to call it. Women certainly are more tapped into that, I think. And it's a blessing. It's a gift. Gosh, I love that we are able to literally create life. I mean, how amazing is that we can you just think about it. Like it's so normal to us. We can literally grow another human inside of our bodies and then push them out of a very small hole. Very small. It's so insane. And that just, and also what's cool about that too is even if you don't choose to have children, you still have the ability to give birth to projects and things that will impact the world. And so whether or not it's a human, a project, a business, an idea, something you're passionate about, we have the ability to nurture, to create, to nurture, and to give birth to something that will have an impact on the world. And I just love the cyclical nature of our bodies. Like we are so connected to Mother Nature. Our bodies, like you mentioned before, we cycle with the moon. Like our bodies are on approximately 28-day cycles and the moon is on a 28-day cycles. And our bodies go through all 4 seasons of the year every month. We go through that death and rebirth cycle. Like we are the pinnacle of life. Like we literally go through a death and rebirth cycle once a month.
Mother Gaia.
Yeah, literally. So, I think I could go on and on about this, but I just love, we are just the epitome of like connectedness, like oneness for the world. And we are the glue that keeps everything together.
For sure. For sure. What are you reading right now? Or what is a book that you recommend to people? I mean, I find that everybody has like at least one book that has really transformed their life or their spirit. What's yours?
Yeah, I'm going to give you two because I'm going to tell you the book I'm reading right now is, has changed my life so far, but I'm not done with it. So it could suck at the end. So the first book I want to recommend, you never know. So I don't want to go too far, but the first book I recommend that I've read probably 12 times is The Universe Has Your Back by Gabby Bernstein. It's a classic. I've got it. Like, I think it's like marked up. I think I dropped it in the bathtub. So it's like crispy, but like it is like just that. It's just such a reminder to come back to like trusting and surrendering, like we talked. So that's probably why I resonate with it so much. The second book I'm reading right now that has, even in the first chapter, I was just like mind blown. It's called, no, I'm just like, what is it called? It's about perfectionist. Hold up. I'm going to look, like I said, I'm listening to it on Audible. It's called The Perfectionist Guide to Losing Control by Catherine Morgan Schaeffler. And a lot of people think that being a perfectionist means that you are, it is a good thing. And it can be a good thing. And also like, there's one type of perfectionist, like their house is meticulous and they this or that. Well, I can tell you my apartment's not meticulous, but I'm a perfectionist. She breaks it down into like 5 or 6 types of perfectionists. And understanding how you interact with the world. And I literally was like, this woman is literally telling me my life story. Like, it was just so wild. And perfectionism can show up just like everything else. It's a spectrum and it can show up in your life in so many different ways. And well, same thing with stress. You want to make peace with your perfectionism and understand how it has helped you and how it can help you. You also want to kind of keep it in check and make sure that it's not preventing you from being happy and healthy. So I'm probably halfway through. I'm really enjoying that book right now.
Awesome. Yeah. I think we could all use that. I find that, most women that I know have some type of perfectionist thread that runs through us, and maybe that's something just with our, natural connection to, nurturing and wanting things to be right in the world. But
the patriarchy.
Right. The patriarchy. We've been told we have to be perfect, right? Thank you so much for being here, Haley. How can people connect with you and work with you? I mean, if you want to share your Instagram or anything, of course, we'll put this in the show notes as well, but how can people get in touch and connect?
Yes. Thank you so much. So Instagram, it's at holistic_in_Houston. So holistic in Houston with underscores. I'm the most active if you want to like follow my content there. I do post like a blog post like once a week about holistic health. So if you're more of a reader, you can check out my website at holisticinhouston.com. Subscribe to my newsletter. I send out like 1 or 2 emails a month. I do a lot of events in Houston, yoga events. I do a lot of like workshops and things like that. So that's the best way to connect with me on those. I guess my website and my Instagram are the best ways to connect with me and learn about my events and my offerings and stuff.
Awesome. Are you promoting anything right now? Are there any programs or services that you're currently offering or really, kind of in that, enrollment phase, I guess you could say? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I don't have any programs. I am accepting a couple of private clients for July and August. I don't know when this is coming out, but I'm accepting clients for like late summer, early fall. And then I do an event twice a month called Yoga and Swim at HTX Pool Garden here in Houston. It's yoga, and then we do an hour of yoga, and then we have a couple hours to like swim by the pool. And that's been just such a fun way to bring the community together, especially you don't necessarily have to be single, but a lot of singles seem to flock to this. So like if you're struggling to meet people, friends, or potential romantic partners in the wellness community, like I kind of created this because Houston's not exactly the most like wellness centric city in the world. So I try to create a lot of experiences and events to bring people together and really strengthen that sense of community because we can't be on our wellness journey alone. So those are probably the 2 things. I have a lot of other just workshops, partnerships I have coming up with like local businesses that are all on my website and my Instagram.
Wonderful. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kimberly.
Of course. And to anybody listening, thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, take a screenshot, share it to social media, tag me at kimberly.brook.smith so I can repost it, so I can say thank you. And just know that it's super helpful in spreading these positive messages out into our world, out into our community to other women who need to hear this information. So send it to a friend if you think that they would enjoy, and keep shining. I will chat with you soon, and we will see you on the next episode.